Hi, and welcome to the Sacred You podcast, where we create sacred community together. My name is Rachel Goodwin, and I'm a channel, healer, author, and spiritual teacher who loves to empower you on your spiritual path. If you're ready to up level, come over to my website, rachelgoodwin.dk, and come and browse through all of my offerings with Sarah the Magdalene's daughter and the lineage of the Blue Rose. So if anybody has heard me talking about going to the sauna, the sauna, or winter bathing, you know that I am an avid fan of the alchemy that happens when you use a sauna. And today we've got a special treat. Valerie Budayr is an extremely knowledgeable woman, and I just love asking her questions and just hearing all of the interesting information that comes forth from her. So Val is a sound practitioner, a breathwork facilitator, mindfulness teacher. She's also an author, publisher and CEO of audreypress.com. She describes herself as seeker, warrior, knowing woman, and founder of Mongata, an online centre for well-being and inner healing. As the daughter of immigrant parents, her Gotland, Swedish ancestral roots and heritage strongly influence her beliefs, values, practices and desires to express kindness and inclusion for all. Blessed be. Enjoy today's episode. So welcome everybody to another episode of Sacred You, and I have my lovely friend here, Val, who I know from doing a course together in Sweden. How long ago was that, Val? Do you remember?
We started, I think, 2018, 2019, and it went on for years. Years. It was the course, the long course.
It was a long course because COVID happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it was supposed to be a 2-year course, and it ended up, I think, being 5 years. But it really, cemented in all of our circle and our relationships, and they just keep unfolding, don't they?
Oh, they do, and I'm just so happy to see you again. And I've, invited you to come and talk about one of my favorite subjects, and I know it's one of your favorite subjects
It
as
is.
well.
It is.
You're going to tell us about sauna.
Yeah, sauna. So I come from a Swedish background. So for us it's bastu. And so yeah, but I think all the Nordic countries love their sauna.
Yeah, and actually, oh, I've got this huge book, absolutely huge book. So I was trying to find out, like, if there was a history of sauna in Denmark, because I thought there must be. And I wrote to someone I know who, it's good to have these friends who like know all sorts of bits and pieces about, Old
Yeah.
Norse and all the rest of it. And I wrote to a special friend and asked her, and she said she'd heard of a snippet about archaeological find of a sweat room near Lejre. And Lejre is, I mean, it's thought by many to have been the seat of power in Denmark. So I sent off for this, but I've got to go and get it. Excuse me, just disappearing. Hang on a sec.
Oh, wow. That's not the book I was expecting. Viking Dynasty. There's actually a big book of sauna, that big.
I was like, it's Viking dynasties, the royal families of Lejre and Uppsala between archaeology and text. And it's a Danish guy called Tom Christensen, John Lundqvist, and Neil Price, our beloved
Oh, I
Neil
love Neil.
Price. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love Neil. Yeah.
And I was so excited to see that. And that's how far I've got through it so far there. But I only got it.
You're going to be an expert by the end of that book.
Yeah, I only got it last week. And it's because like in the back of it, there's no index. So I can't actually find where that reference is. I'm gonna have to read the whole book.
Aw.
It's really good. I definitely
Okay. I
recommend
have to
it.
look into
Yeah.
that. That
Mm.
was not the book I was expecting. There's actually a big book of sauna, like sauna that's like that big. It's out of print now, but that's the book I was expecting you to pull out. That was not the book.
Yeah, because I wanted to find some roots, because I know that
Yeah.
Danes haven't been as sort of sauna orientated as some of our brethren.
I don't know the Danish origins, but it's thought it'll oftentimes sauna will get attributed to the Vikings, but I think they brought it back from Southern Europe and from Turkey.
Okay.
And historically, we can see that Rome also had saunas. So they had steam rooms, the Roman baths, and then we have the Turkish baths, which are also steam rooms, and they beat with branches as well. But the Romans had something where it would be a hole dug in the ground, and they would have, like hot fire heat going into this hole. Then sauna in Finland, the Finns have everybody beat when it comes to sauna. There's like 5, 6, 7 million people in Finland, and they have like 4 million saunas. It kind of we understand they love sauna. So in Finland, it is said that the sauna comes from the Sami, and that sauna is actually a Sami word. So I think, it like anything, it's not created in a vacuum. Lots of people are doing it all at the same time. And because the Norse people, the Nordic people are seafaring people, they bring back little trinkets of things with them. So that's kind of how it's thought of,
Yeah,
its
that's
migration.
yeah, that's really interesting because I had thought of it as a Scandinavian thing because like when I moved here from the UK, and the winters are tough in Denmark, not because we have, because we're southern Scandinavia, we don't have, it's not like northern Sweden where you just like only get like a tiny bit of day during the winter, but it is grey nearly for the whole of the winter. It's either cloud cover or you're in fog and you hardly ever see the sun. And it's just cold, dark, and dank. I mean, it's really, really tough. And going to the sauna in the morning and doing winterbanding, it is like the light of my life. And so I thought, oh, well, of course they've got sauna because, like, how else would you survive the winter? And I hadn't sort of thought
Mm-hmm.
about it, sort of like coming from, but I mean, of course, that makes total sense what you're saying about the Turks and the Romans. And yeah,
And so, there's no definitive, it started on this day by
yeah.
these people. But there's, a lot of different theories of how it got started. And it's really comforting to have that warm heat. Um, and I like sauna by myself, but really when you think of it as a community tool, it's lovely.
I love just going and sitting down there, in early in the morning. I like doing it early in the morning because it sets my whole day up. I don't go every
Mm-hmm.
day. Last year I went a lot more because I needed it. This year I'm doing a bit better and I go once or twice a week now. But no matter how my mood is when I go in, I come out several grades up at
Mm-hmm.
least,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes more. And you know, you don't get any side effects.
You don't get any side effects. The healing benefits of sauna is so impactful. And I don't know if you want to talk about that now or further down the line, but it does relieve depression. It does, it's amazing for your heart. It's amazing for your brain. They've been doing studies on sauna. Those people that go and take sauna 6 to 7 times a week have a 50% less chance of getting Alzheimer's and dementia. And so
Wow.
that's just a recent study that came out. But then your skin and your hair, and then your emotional body, like you were saying, you feel so good and you sleep better. Your anxiety goes way down, depression gets altered. I mean, and then if you have arthritis or any joint stiffness, which happens after a certain age, it really alleviates that. So, sauna It's this body spiritual landscape that is just so meaningful.
I suppose what I'm thinking about is how it kind of got stopped as a tradition in Denmark and, I don't know, maybe other places as well. And I was reading something about, I think it was in that, I don't know. I think, yeah, because I was researching, trying to find out any roots in Denmark, but there was a lot of talking about how when Christianity came here, which was very, very late, compared to the rest of Europe, um, they weren't so keen about a lot of men and women sitting together in a room naked.
They weren't so keen on that. No, they weren't. Well, there's this a book. It's called the Bathhouse at Midnight. It's based on the sauna tradition in Russia. But basically, if you were in the sauna at night, it was thought you were practicing magic. And so when the church came in, one, they want to control every aspect of sexuality and what you're thinking. Everything has to be given to the church, whatever. But then if after a certain time, especially if you were in the sauna after midnight, you were a witch. You were practicing magic craft, and that was looked down upon by the church. And in Sweden, I think like 1746, they forbid sauna completely.
Yeah,
And it wasn't so much, men and women being naked together in the sauna. It was the magic part.
yeah. And I think the same thing happens here. And yeah, I mean, I think in Denmark it's really coupled with that. Not that I'm an expert on this, but just from what I've seen and heard, it's coupled with the winter bathing, you know, and getting into that lovely cold water, which I absolutely love. But also all the swimming pools I've been to have got saunas in them as well.
Yeah,
And when I
yeah,
said to Thomas that you don't really get that in the UK, he was shocked. He was actually
yeah.
shocked. He was like, "You don't have saunas?" I was like,
No,
"No, no."
that's the thing. I own two saunas back at my house in Tennessee. Here in New Mexico, there's this wonderful sauna center. And I just go in there a couple times a week because, I can't live without my sauna. And so they're infrared saunas. They're not Finnish saunas, but still, it's lovely to get that heat.
I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think about the infrared saunas? Because I
Mhm.
imagine that for people listening, that's probably much more what they've got,
Okay,
accessible
so
to.
let me just talk about the difference between the saunas. So a Finnish sauna, you have the dry heat for a while, and then you'll pour the water on the rocks and get the steam. And the sauna is made of wood, so the wood absorbs all that steam. So you get about 10% humidity, but it's really good, and it heats your body from the outside in. Infrared heats your body from the inside out. So it raises your core temperature. And that's why, like, for example, today it's really cold here in New Mexico. I think when I woke up this morning, it was 18 degrees. So going into an infrared sauna and heating my core temperature means that when I get out of the sauna, I'll keep that warmth all day long. And so even I can walk outside and it doesn't feel cold. So it heats your core temperature. So that's the difference between the two. And then infrared's really good for inflammation, bone health. It has its own properties, healing properties. So those are the differences between the two. I have one infrared and one Finnish sauna. Like it's sauna. I love them all.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what properties does the infrared sauna have? You said bone health.
Yeah. So, it really affects your osteo skeletal system. And so bones breathe just like anything else. And so
Oh,
heating that core temperature expands the bones and helps them rejuvenate.
oh, that's interesting. And then it works particularly well because it is working from the inside
Hmm.
out.
Hmm.
You're
Yeah.
not you're not getting cooked or anything though, are you? I mean,
Slowly baked, to the right temperature. So, you know, infrared, because of that heating inside with the core,
Yeah.
infrared saunas aren't as hot as a Finnish sauna. So my infrared gets to about 150 degrees. That's it. 100, I don't think it even hits 180. I think
I guess
150.
that must be Fahrenheit. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm
Yes.
not too good on Fahrenheit though.
Sorry. I'm going to speak Fahrenheit because I don't do Celsius. So
No, I
20
know.
degrees is 70 degrees. So like for really 50 degrees Celsius, really, I don't know. I need to check on that.
Yeah.
And then a Finnish sauna will go to 220 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's quite a difference. But again, you're heating from the outside in,
Yeah.
and you're getting that sweat on. And I
Yeah.
do sweat in an infrared sauna, but not as much as I do in a Finnish sauna. And you know, the higher you go up in a Finnish sauna, the top bench, it's the hottest there. So laying down for 20 minutes up on the top shelf and sweating, and then
Mm.
coming down to the bottom shelf to start cooling off before you, well, it's
Mm.
not cooling off, it's just a cooler than the top shelf. So yeah.
I guess it's maybe the humidity, is it, that makes you sweat more in a Finnish sauna?
Can be. It's actually the heat that starts your
Oh, because all
circulatory
right,
system.
okay.
And yeah. And then when you put the water on the
Mm.
rocks, then that, you know, steam just opens everything up.
Yeah. So it would be lovely to hear about yeah, the sauna is the house of the ancestors. I loved it. When I heard you say that, I was just like, I just connected to it straight away.
Yeah. So the sauna is the house of the ancestors. And so there's this Finnish saying that says, enter a sauna like you would a church. So with reverence, enter quietly. Um, you know, and there's these unspoken rules of sauna, um, that, you know, you don't talk heavy topics. You don't have an argument. You don't drink alcohol in the sauna. Outside on the party deck might be something different after the sauna is all done. You know, you're not having romantic relationships in the sauna. It's really a place of reverence. And where the idea of it's the house of our ancestors came from is that it's a happy place. It's a clean place. It's energetically clean. Um, and then it's soulfully clean. It's just a clean, sacred space. And many saunas were in the olden days built on sacred land, sacred places on the land. So you have reverence for the earth. You have reverence, such respect is spent there. But then it's also thought that your ancestors return back to places on the earth that made them happy. And the sauna is always a place that makes us happy. Like, even look at you and I. We get so happy when we get to talk about sauna, right? So it's thought that when we come back to revisit our earthly places, one of the places that ancestors always return to is the sauna. It's the place that they'll go to check up on the family. And so you wouldn't want your ancestors seeing anything disrespectful. And so that's why we call it the house of our ancestors. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And what you said about them being built on power places. I mean, I can just imagine
Yeah.
what a wonderful thing to do. Because I was thinking about how when I go down to winter bathing and the sauna is next to the fjord, it's in the harbour, it's in Roskilde
Yeah.
harbour, and it's got a lovely energy. And, you know, it's sitting on top of that seawater like this, you know, because I love the sea, sacred seawater, and there's loads of sacred spring water coming in from the springs in Roskilde, and just the whole vibe there. And I mean, because it does close during the summer, and I go to like the local, yeah, swimming pool and use their sauna, and it is nice, but it doesn't have that happy energy that you're talking about. And you know, because I say this often to my friends, I have friends, we meet up there, and I said, I love the way everybody's so happy here, and it's genuine. It's not that, American or British way of sort of like going, oh, hello, and pretending to be happy, because that's what you have to do to be socially acceptable. That you can feel it, like it's a real joy. And for me, like, I am not generally a joyful person before 9 o'clock in the morning, and I can be joyful from 6 o'clock onwards if I'm in the sauna.
See, it just does wonderful things. So, we can, in our modern contemporary mind, we can say this is a Nordic tradition. This is a health and well-being tradition, and brings it into these contemporary times. But if you really look at sauna, what you're talking about is that it's a soul landscape. It connects us with Mother Earth and all of her elements. And so many of her elements are inside the sauna house itself. It connects us with our community. It connects us with ourself in this most gentle, sacred manner. And at the same time, nourishing our sense of well-being. So, even there's so many different types of saunas, which we've hit on a little bit, but like in Finland, especially, there's these places called retreat saunas, and you'll hike in to this sauna place in the middle of the forest. And it's probably on a sacred site. I don't know all the sacred sites in Finland, but then there might be wood sitting there, and they use special types of wood, pine, cedar, birch to burn. And so there might be already wood cut there, or you get there and you cut the wood, you create a sauna, and you stay there for a few hours, and then you hike out. You shut everything down and hike out. So it's this idea of a retreat, and having that sacred communion with self and sauna and earth. And the other thing that makes it part of the home of our ancestors is really the elements of the sauna itself. So in Finland, especially, they have all these sayings that you say. You'll enter the sauna when you enter a sauna. So you'll enter the sauna quietly. And if you look at where the hot rocks are, look at that as an altar. And you'll whisper something really gentle and kind to this altar. And of course, your ancestors are listening, right? And it's really interesting because I was reading in a book last night, there was like 40 different sayings or proverbs you could say when you enter a sauna. So that's a sacred act. And the other reason why the church shut it down is because sauna was a place for ceremony. And you and I, Rachel, have participated in a couple sauna ceremonies, so you know that well. And so it's the sacred soul landscape. There's this thread that runs from the time you're born to the time you die, and it always weaves itself through the sauna. I can't tell you how many people I know in Finland that were born in a sauna.
Still to this day, even?
Yeah.
Wow.
Not everybody's near a big city, right?
Yeah, okay.
And healthcare in Finland's exceptional, so it's a choice, right? But the older generation, my parents' generation, and coming towards my generation, I know so many people born in a sauna.
Okay, and that's from Gotland.
Not from Gotland. This is Finland.
This is Finland. Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah. And so, this is when I talk about a soul landscape. So you're born in the sauna. If you would get sick, you would be taken to the sauna to get healing and to be made well. It also separates you from everybody else in the house and the farm and the village, so they don't get sick too. It's a nice little isolatory way. It's also a place that can be warm, and a place that you can be taken care of. And then there's all the ceremonies of your life. So, your birthday sauna, the Christmas Eve sauna, the New Year's Eve sauna, the midsummer sauna. So there's just these landmarks in your year, landmarks in your life. If you're getting married, you have your hendo party in the sauna. And as you're sweating, every ex-boyfriend you've ever had, you're screaming his name out loud and purging that. Yeah. And then, the men also do like a bachelor party in the sauna, and it's, it's reverence in the sauna. And then when you come out, there's usually a big deck around the sauna where you can have something to eat and drink afterwards. So, but when you're in the sauna, it's always reverent. Um, and then up to the time, maybe when you retire, you're having a retirement sauna. There's all these like little marks in your life that you'll do in the sauna. And then when you die, your body's taken there or was taken there to be washed and prepared for burial. So it's really a cradle to grave house. And so you live your whole life in this building. And then, you become an ancestor and you hang out there to see how the future generations are doing. Yeah.
Oh, how fantastic. And of course, people would have had like family saunas like on their own
Mhm.
land, as just a
So our
normal
our
thing.
yeah, yeah. Our family sauna was at my grandmother's house, and every Saturday we would go and do our sauna. And in the summer, I would spend time with her, and we would do a sauna there. On when we go to Gotland in the summer, so many of the farms near us have saunas, and there's a bathhouse in Visby that has a lovely sauna, and lots of the hotels do too. And so it's the thing, yeah.
And I'm thinking that like what you were saying about like having a hen party and you're going there and you're like releasing all of those guys from the
Hmm.
past that you're just like you're starting afresh and that yeah, that's great, isn't it? You could translate that into all sorts of like situations in your life and I hadn't thought about using the sauna that way.
Yeah, so it's a ceremonial house, or even like the day or two before your wedding, they bring in 7 types of water that they bring into the pail that they're going to throw onto the hot rocks. And, that water is called luili, which means the water on the rocks or breath on the rocks. And so in these Finno-Ugric languages, which is Finland, Hungary, Mongolia, it's a wide span. Lil means soul. So it's soul water. That's another thing that makes it a house of the ancestors, is that water we throw on the rocks symbolizes the breath of our ancestors, breath of the planet, breath of the gods and goddesses, divinity itself. And so, it's a very sacred thing, that water. So just a day or two before your wedding, they'll bring 7 types of water from different places. Depending where you live, those water landmarks change. But then that water that's the ancestry of the land around you and the waterways around you that get thrown onto the rocks before you enter into your marriage and your new life and moving forward. So even nature herself is supporting you.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
wonderful. Oh my word. I really love it.
yeah.
Oh. So how about some healing ceremonies? I mean, yeah, the first time I came across this was when I was looking on the internet and I saw that the Finns and birch twigs and all sorts of things. How do you what kind of healing work do you do in the sauna?
I don't know that I do healing work in the sauna unless it's for close family members. And it's
Yeah.
just like I live in the desert of New Mexico, so I don't have access to my personal sauna.
Mm.
But I just know, like, even the way when a woman is pregnant and welcoming her child into the world and acknowledging as a community her child. But other ways, birch is a very significant part of any sauna ritual or tradition. And, birch itself has healing properties, and we oftentimes make a drink out of birch to drink after the sauna. So just that word itself, birch. And then also in our worldview, being Northerners, way north, the birch tree is also said to hold our male ancestors. So in Sweden, it's very common outside of a farmhouse, directly outside, that you'll see a birch tree in the front yard. And that is the ancestor tree. And so to cut the branches from that tree. We usually do that around midsummer. And that's what we beat people with in the sauna, those birch, the whisk. Um, but then I think even going further back into like working with the runes, and when you can find so many runes inside the sauna. And so birch is the rune Bjerka, which is really interesting because Bjerka is a feminine rune, right? It's meaning everything female, woman, birch. But then when we go to the birch tree, it takes on the masculine ancestors. So it's a complete balance of yin and yang, actually, male and female. It really balances those neutralities. So healing in the sauna would be one using the medicinal purposes of the heat of the sauna, bringing in herbs such as birch, but there's other herbs that one can use as well. And then using I want to say the magic of the runes, because we do something that we sing runes in a special way, oftentimes taking out the vowels or placing vowels in and creating something called Galdr, which are songs and incantations that can bring healing. And that is very specific to each practitioner, but also each person that's needing healing and the guidance that that healer is getting. And so, you're always going to have healing when you're in a sauna, like you were talking about. But then as a healing practitioner to go into a sauna, there's so many different layers, from the reverence you have in a sauna to, what types of tools you're bringing in. So what's the plant life you're bringing in? Is it birch? Is it licorice root? Is it chamomile? There's this whole bevy of herbs and flowers and healing roots that grow in the forest around the sauna that you can use. And then what songs are you going to sing? And then I think one of the most important parts of healing, whether in a sauna or anywhere, is silence and stillness, which we can be so uncomfortable with. So like when I'm doing sound healing, my goal, if I have a goal, it's to bring everybody to stillness, because we don't experience that anymore in this modern life. So those are just some of the ways that healing can be done in the sauna, beside the heat itself.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about using sound in the sauna, because I love chanting and using beautiful ancient chants, and but yeah,
No,
it is a communal space, so it's not like a private sauna where I can't just burst into song. I think people would be quite surprised if I suddenly.
no, but is what you could do is go and ask the manager, I need 1 hour in the sauna, like in a non-busy time, could I reserve the sauna for an hour?
Yeah, yeah,
And that can work. And
yeah.
then using sound, vowels are actually very sacred sounds. And so many of our ancient languages, vowels were not even written down. That was the part of magic of being like a scribe in ancient Egypt or ancient Greece or Mesopotamia. And is that you needed to know where the vowels were. We have a couple of modern day languages that still work that way, Arabic and ancient Hebrew. You don't know where the vowel marks are. So those of us that know where the vowels marks are, we were considered higher learned people or magical people, because that was the magic. So the 7 vowels, 5 to 7 vowels, depending on the language, were really for people who had served an apprenticeship and were taught by a master. And apprenticeships oftentimes last 1,000 days, which is 3 years. So on your 999th day, you're an apprentice. And on the 1,000th day, you are now your own master. You are no longer anybody's apprentice. So just singing the vowels, and a lot of time singing them into the place in the body where there's pain. Usually people come to a sauna healing because of pain. And singing vowels into that place can relieve that pain.
Wow. Have you tried it? Have you tried doing that?
Mhm. Yeah.
Cool. That is so
Yeah. And a
cool.
lot of the times I'm not working in a sauna, I'm working in my healing center, which
Yeah.
is a sound healing center.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. And then teaching the client how to tone those vowels for themselves
Mm,
and where it's activating in the body
mm.
empowers them that all the healing they need actually lives inside themselves. I think it's always important to empower people that you don't always have to look outside yourself, maybe to help facilitate, hold space, give you the support you're needing. But all of us ultimately have everything we need to heal already there inside us.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, our sauna, it's a forening, which means it's a democracy, really. Very, very Danish. So things are decided by the forening. But you never know, one day in the further future, I would really love to try singing in there and seeing how that was. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the runes, because I wrote to you, I don't know, a year or two ago and asked you about some runes, and you gave me Ken and Is. And I work with those. I work with those two runes nearly every week. And when I'm in the sauna, I see Ken, which is like the primordial fire rune. If people
Mm-hmm.
don't know that one, and it looks like a V kind of on its side. And when I'm in the sun, I like imagine that's in me. It's often in my solar plexus region because I have a lot of solar plexus issues. And I'm imagining it's like clearing it all away and like opening me up to spirit so that I'm getting all this like good stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I go out into the water and I'm like climbing down that ladder into the cold water, I see East. Like I swim about a bit and then I sit on the ladder and just sort of sit there for a minute. And I see East in me and I imagine that it is solidifying and materializing like all that good stuff that's just like come into me, and like I'm calling down more of my soul with this East rune. And it is just it's fantastic.
Yeah. There's several ruins in the sauna. So 10, is the fire itself that lives in the sauna. It's the sauna spirit. Each sauna, everybody has its own spirit that lives under the floorboard. So, another reason to be very respectful in the sauna is because you don't want to piss off the sauna tanta. Not a good look. You will have a lot of mischief in your life. So Ken, which is like the greater than sign, um, is really not only the healing spiritual element of fire, but it's also an igniter. So what needs a quick start underneath you that needs a little inspiration to start moving things in your life? That hot fire of the sauna gets your blood moving. It gets your respiration going. So it really is this igniter, and you can take that idea on many, many levels. Then east, which means ice, and it's just the straight line down. And oftentimes in a rune reading, people will get really kind of anxious when they see that come up because it means stagnation, things are stuck. But the nice thing about Nordic ice is that it's clear and that you can see what's stuck. It's not like the ice from your fridge, which is all kind of murky. It's really clear ice, so you can see. It's like seeing through a mirror or through a window. It becomes a window to what is solidified in there. And I love the way you're using it, Rachel, as a way to just solidify the things you do want there. Like we want good things stuck, right, in us. So I love that. I love that take on it.
Yeah, thank you. And, I find that really useful because I think, a lot of spiritual people that I meet, we talk about this and opening up to spirit. That is kind of the easy bit. It's manifesting it. That's the tricky bit. And that feels like where ease comes in and is kind of like helping that because it is heavy. It is, steam and heat, and it's all very light and all the rest of it. But you need that heaviness. Like if you're going to make things in this world, you've got to sort of get down into that
Yeah,
energy. But it needn't be something negative. It can be a good thing.
it can be a really good thing. And also ice has a cooling factor. So some people get overheated. Their lives are overheated. And that ice just kind of brings things, cool it down, and starts bringing order to the chaos. That's what you're talking about, Rachel, and just cools things down. And in the sauna, we always take the journey from fire to ice. So starting at the top shelf where it's so hot and you're sweating, sweating, sweating. Then you come down to the lower steps and you can kind of like breathe easy. And then we put the water on the rocks, and that's sacred breath. That's the As or Ansus ruin, right? That sacred breath of ancestors, divinity, whatever it means for you. And then we come outside the door of the sauna and we go into the cold water. So and then we do this in a couple of rounds. So it's not one and done. We do 2, 3, 4 rounds, and the group kind of decides that what they're feeling. But it's always this journey from fire to ice and ice back to fire. And it's its own cycle.
Mm. It is, and it is, and it's so relaxing as well, just letting
Yeah.
go of all of that stress. And I can see it is just getting more and more popular now, and it would be great. I think, the world would be a much better place if we were all using sauna.
Yeah. It would be a better place because people are focusing on their self-care. And you can say, I'm taking care of myself. This is self-care. But then when you go into a community sauna like you're in, Rachel, this becomes a collective that shows up same time, same day, same place. And it becomes a community of people who are taking care of themselves. And as you're centered and feel nurtured by the sauna, then you go out into your daily life and you're not reactive, you're calm, you can contribute amazing things because you're being intentional about it, not reactive. So I do.
Yeah,
I think
that's
I
really
think
true.
it's
That's really true, actually, because I'm not a fan of being in crowded spaces with other people, you know? And that's one of the things I like about Denmark is, compared to the UK, it's much less intense. There's fewer people around, but actually, I'm really fine going down to the sauna because the atmosphere in there is so good, and the whole vibe of the people and the place. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that actually. I'm
yeah.
always glad to put myself down there, and I don't have, I have a bit of social anxiety. Like if I'm going to any events, there's always a little barrier I have to break through. I don't have that about going there. I'm just like straight down there.
And it's also the sauna is an antiseptic. So if you're worried about
Yeah.
being in a close place with a lot of people, naked people, you don't have to worry because the heat itself purifies the space and there's really no germ contamination.
Yeah, and I love that. I do love that because it is something that I do think about and got worse since COVID.
Yeah, COVID gave us a whole new dimension on being together, didn't it?
Are there any other things that you wanted to touch on about the sauna that we haven't sort of covered or got to?
No, I think we've really done a great overview of sauna. And, I just encourage all of you listeners who are not in a Nordic country to really start seeking out saunas. And they even have them small enough now that you can put them in a room in your house. So, and those are infrared saunas. I've even seen them little tents you put up in your spare bedroom. There's sauna blankets. Um, so there's a whole wide variety of ways to do sauna, and it's just so lovely. So just encouraging you to research this a little more and see where you can find it near you.
Do you think you'll do any kind of sauna retreats at any
I
point?
would love to do a sauna retreat. I'm really looking for a space. So if you know of any space where we could do group sauna and do a retreat, I would love that. Because it's not just the sauna and, of course, learning about the sauna, but it's really doing ceremony in the sauna. There's something so powerful in that. And Rachel and I have both been in sauna ceremonies before, and it's very powerful. And the sauna wasn't lit, it wasn't a hot sauna. It was just really just this sacred space to hold ceremony and to acknowledge people that we really cared about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I'll definitely ask people because I bet there is, I bet there is, I bet there is somewhere. I bet there is somewhere. And when you were saying about like hiking out to Finland and I was there.
Okay,
I had my
yeah.
backpack on and but I mean, maybe there's something close a bit closer for me. It could be
Well,
um
no, and even if there's a beautiful hotel even,
yeah,
and it doesn't, or a retreat center out in nature
yeah.
where we could spend 4 or 5 days together taking
Yeah.
sacred saunas, but also really coming into our own self-worth, what we need to let go of as a community of women. And I think there's so much healing around that. And so if somebody can find a place, I will organize it.
You're on.
Yeah.
You heard it
Yeah.
here.
Yes, I do. Yeah. I love organizing retreats. It's so fun to get together.
What have you got coming up for you in the rest of this year? What
In
projects have
the
you got going on?
okay, so the big project is I'm doing a retreat on the island of Gotland in June 15th through the 22nd. It is focusing on the labyrinth as a portal. We're doing labyrinth ceremonies. I'm co-facilitating with my friend Lars Howlett. We are also looking at soul songs. And so, no, you won't be performing in front of people, but really finding your own voice and that song that you came into this life with. So, Gotland has more labyrinths per capita than anywhere else in the world. We have some of the oldest labyrinths on the planet. Scandinavia has the oldest labyrinths on the planet. So one of our labyrinths is 3,800 years old, and we have another one that's 1,000 years old. So really studying that tradition of classical labyrinths, doing ceremonies in the labyrinths. Our theme this year is signs and symbols. So taking the ruins, but then going back further in time with them. So we know the story of Odin and how he got the ruins, but Freya taught him how to read the ruins. Who taught Freya? Her mother Nertus. So Nertus is a big goddess, was a big goddess in Denmark, but Denmark also owned Gotland for a few hundred years. So we also have a Nertus culture there. And then ultimately there was the same alphabet of 32 runic-like alphabets that went through all of Central Europe and then up into the northern part of Europe. So we have 21 runic alphabets on the planet. We can see all of them stemming from this one alphabet in Eastern Europe and going everywhere. So really looking at signs and symbols connected with the labyrinth and deepening our attachment to our feminine self through signs and symbols as doorways, magical doorways.
Yeah.
So that's coming up in June. You can go to my website, Mongata, MONGATA.org. And you'll see it in the hamburger menu, Sweden retreat. Go there and it will take you to the page. But we have a couple of spaces left, and I would love to see anybody who would love to join us.
I would definitely recommend going if you possibly can. Labyrinths are wonderful, and so is Valerie. She's a wonderful practitioner and very experienced retreat leader. So yeah, I wish I could come.
I wish you could come too. That would be great. Yeah. So, and I can send you the link, Rachel, and you can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. And is there anything else you've got for the rest of 2025?
I've really only got it planned until midsummer.
Yeah.
And then in my healing center here in Santa Fe, I'm really looking at doing 1-day women retreats around movement and sound healing, and how each one of us can take just even one little Himalayan bowl and create a whole meditative practice. So, doing 1-day retreats at the center. Of course, we have sound baths and breath work, and a whole variety of courses coming in. So I just have it kind of planned through June, and then I'll figure out the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, I'm the same actually. I've got up until the summer, and then I'm just starting to realize that I have to like fix myself to some dates now for the rest of the year. But it's a lot to think about a whole year all at once, isn't it?
Well, and the world is just really moving so quickly now. And so, really kind of planning in the moment to really support people in what they're needing. So, instead of planning 6 months out, and it's so irrelevant by the time we get there, so really just, I've been creating a lot of YouTube meditations, and my podcast, the Mongata podcast, has a lot of meditations and just quick tips for how to like relieve stress, relieve anxiety. That's kind of where we are right now, just really trying to get through each moment. So just trying to help provide tools for that.
Fantastic. And it's so, so valuable because, of course, in the old world, we would just try and repress it all and carry on. But now we've learned that actually it's much better if we can try and let go for our health and our
Yeah.
well-being and our families and ourselves and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think that we co-create our every living moment with the universe, and that's a big thought for many of us. So pulling it back, we can't bring into the things in our life that we're dreaming of if we're in a state of fear, anxiety, and stress. It's counterintuitive. You cannot create in a state of stress, is what you're going to create is more stress. So getting to that place where you can pull back and you say, what do I want to create? Even if the world around you is insane. It might be, I just want to have a peaceful dinner with my family. And pulling back to be able to do that is a great gift. So just helping people get to that place in as short amount of time as possible.
Yes, yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for today. I've got lots of fresh inspiration now.
Yay. Thank you, Rachel. I love talking sauna with you.
We could do another one sometime on labyrinths or something else that
Yeah.
we both feel really excited about. So, but it's been wonderful, and yeah, I really appreciate you, Val.
I appreciate you too, Rachel. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I love it.
You're welcome, and thanks to all of you for listening. We'd love to know what you thought. So pop over to the Sacred You podcast Facebook page or come on my website and just let us know what you thought. Lots of love, everybody. Bye for now. Bye. Hi, I'm Rachel Goodwin. I'm a spiritual teacher, energy healer, and therapist. And I channel Sarah, daughter of the Magdalene, and the Blue Rose. Now, to book an individual session with me, go to my website, rachelgoodwin.dk. I can't wait to hear from you.